Good evening, everyone. I have read your practicum logs number 1 and your discussion boards related to student incivility today and have provided feedback to you. Remember that the feedback that you get for your practicum logs, the narrative feedback is almost always going to be in Typhon. So you'll see the general point outline, but then go back into Typhon to read that feedback. I'm going to encourage you to continue to seek that feedback and find ways to improve your practicum logs. It is also important that if you have an error in your time log, that you correct that before you start log 2. I'm going to encourage you to always double check your time logs. You do not want to get to 6:20 and realize you have a train wreck on your hands, and that your hours, especially in your duration column, do not total 200, because then you'll have to go back and fix them later. So go back in now, make sure that if I've given you feedback to make sure that your duration column is properly calculated, or if you have forgotten to put in your hours for your goals and objective development, make sure you're going to do that, and make sure that that's done before you start your log number 2. Some general reminders about your practicum experience. First and foremost, this practicum experience needs to be intentional. The reason that I tortured you over the goals and objective development was so that you would have a very clear guide to follow as you entered into the practicum setting. You should never be going into your preceptor's office or meeting them on the floor in the classroom and say, so what are we doing today? That's up to you to guide. My hope is that you've worked with your preceptor to work through your goals and objectives so that this isn't the first time they're seeing them in your first meeting. But as you work with them, you're going to want to be able to walk in and say, okay, I have an objective related to facilitating the learning of students in the classroom. How can we fit that in today? Plan accordingly, because one of your assignments in 620 is that you're going to go back into this log and be able to give the dates when each and every one of these goals and objectives are met. So keep in mind that your goals and objectives are not just a suggestion. They're not just an academic exercise to make you pull your hair out and be over it. It's an intentional exercise. We want you to be very methodical in your progression through your learning as it relates to your development as a professional nurse educator. So go in with intention. The other thing to remind you when you think about your practicum experience is that practicum needs to always be supervised one-on-one by your approved Liberty preceptor. You should not be pawned off to multiple people within a department. You should not be at home in your bunny slippers working on a project. You should be directly supervising them, being supervised by your preceptor. And folks, that doesn't mean just in the classroom or in the simulation setting or doing clinical. If your preceptor has office hours and they're seeing students, that time counts. If they're in there grading papers and you're in there helping them grade papers, that time counts. If they're in an advisory board meeting, or maybe they're in a curriculum meeting, that time counts. So often we think that the role of the educator is only educating. There is so much more to this role that is really an important component of this role. So I want you to be very make every effort to get a broad experience of the educator role, but also to understand that you need to be directly supervised by a quality preceptor that you have brought or have agreed to work with directly with Liberty. And that needs to be reflected in your practicum log. If I read your log and it appears that you're out there all by yourself, I'm going to send you a message that says, hey, where's your preceptor? I'm not hearing you mention them. I'm not understanding how they're facilitating your experiences. Dial me in here. And sometimes it's just a writing thing, and sometimes it means you're not being properly supervised. And maybe supervised isn't the best word. Let's use the word mentored, because you guys are all grown up and you know what you're doing. You're professionals. You probably need less supervision as you need more mentoring. You need someone walking alongside you, encouraging you, developing you, pouring into you. So that's what I want for you. And that requires you to be accountable to that person that you have that relationship with. From a discussion board standpoint, this is one of the ones that I love to read because I so get it. There are so often I'm reading your discussions about incivility and I'm saying, I could so talk about this all day long. I've been teaching just under 10 years now, and I teach in the classroom as well as online, and I see all sorts of things. So it is really cool to see you guys go in and read articles and talk to each other and go, wow, I never thought about this, or yeah, I've really thought about this, and let me tell you what I've experienced. for me, it's good to feel like I'm among friends, and you all get the challenges of the complexity of dealing with incivility. One of your classmates did a beautiful job giving us a Christian worldview of that. Megan wrote this. Megan wrote, in order to improve the nursing profession, we must improve upon the nursing education culture. This program, the one that she had in the article, established a code of conduct. These new rules enabled the students to understand what was required of them. As Christian nurses, we must strive to improve the nursing practice while incorporating our Christian beliefs. Matthew 7, verse 12 states, so whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets. And that's the ESV version. This scripture is telling us that we should treat others as we would want to be treated, for this is God's word and his commandment. Showing respect, honesty, acceptance, and willingness to grow and learn are just some of the requirements that we want others to show us. These behaviors and thoughts should be how we treat each other. I think Megan does a beautiful job reminding us how important it is that we truly do treat our students how we want to be treated. We can't demand respect if we don't give respect. We can't demand a kind approach to conflict if we are not equally kind. So I really appreciate that perspective. You guys did a fantastic job with that and did a great job. I'm not sure if it was Zach or Mark who won the award for most peer replies. I always try to keep track, but I lost track. There were so many of those with those two gentlemen. So clearly they were interesting posts. So well done, folks. Let's talk briefly about next week. This is your first teaching plan that's due. So first and foremost, please do not send me a paper. I made it a worksheet, and I made it a worksheet to make it easier on you. Please do not make this worksheet a paper. So don't go into the little boxes and then type a thesis. Bullet point these, give me short answers that are at least reasonably well developed. The idea is for you to use a tool to plan your education strategy. This is an intentional assignment that is designed to give you a tool in your toolbox so that you can, a year from now, if you're teaching, you could say, oh, wait, I need to plan this. And maybe you won't be as detailed, but you'll have a general idea of going back to this plan and being reminded to make sure you have all the pieces and parts that you've planned out, that you have an outline, that you're prepared. So often novice educators go into the classroom and they panic. And part of the panic comes from under-preparing. They come in and they're not as organized. They're missing things. They don't think through activities or assignments very well. They do the one-hit wonders of staying in front of students and lecture to them for 3 hours instead of really looking at all three domains of learning and being able to incorporate a variety of teaching strategies and methodologies in the classroom. So I want you to understand that the full court press in this assignment is not to write a good paper. It is to plan a good assignment. And that the biggest piece of this is understanding the pieces that need to be planned for, not doing a plan for a 3-hour lecture on electrolytes, okay? It is a 15 to 20 minute presentation. Think about, what could I teach in a debriefing after clinical? What could I teach in a team huddle before we begin patient care? What could I teach in the beginning part of a skills lab before they go to the bedside and practice skills? What could I teach at the beginning of a traditional didactic lecture before I place my students in to groups for group activities? Think about just a concept, something important, a key element of something that you could teach about, that you could cover the affective and the affective, cognitive, and psychomotor domains. Okay, all three of them. So you're really going to have to think through, what does this look like? As you go through this, remember, use the worksheet, use bullet points so you can get your ideas squared away. The narrative piece of the overview of what you're going to be teaching content needs to be in an outline format. You need to cover all three domains. You need to include all your teaching materials in this assignment, and you're going to attach them as additional files. So you'll attach the worksheet. Then if you have a PowerPoint for your presentation for your students, you're going to attach that. If you're going to give them a 3-question quiz, you're going to attach that. If you're going to show them a YouTube video, you're going to put that in the worksheet. Make sure that if you got hit by a bus, I could teach your lecture. Okay, I don't want you to get hit by a bus. But if you suddenly disappeared, I have everything I need to walk into your classroom and teach 15 to 20 minutes with all your resources. That's the idea. And here's what's going to happen. I'm going to look at all that stuff and I'm going to give you feedback, and I'm going to say, adjust this, tweak this, don't do this, do this. And then you're going to brush it all up. And then in the last part of the course, I think it's week 8. Yes, it's week 8. You're going to present this. You're going to get your students together and you're going to present this. Now, I know that we're in the summer season and you may have to present this next week, because then your students are going to disappear because summer session is over. It's okay to do it early, but I want you to get your teaching plan together and get feedback next week before you actually implement it to your student population. So the first part of this assignment is doing your teaching plan and getting all your elements together, getting feedback, polishing it, and then implementing it. I promise you, if you send me a teaching plan that is for a 3-hour lecture, you're going to have a train wreck on your hands when it comes to implementing this, because you're going to have to cut out a lot of detail and come up with a snapshot of a lengthy lecture. Do not make this harder on yourselves, okay? The idea is to teach you the process of planning an educational session, not for you to cover massive amounts of information. Don't get lost in that. Okay, I think I have rambled on enough. Let me check my notes and make sure I've got everything. Yep. Okay, I've covered everything. I hope you guys are having a good evening. Know that I am here. If you have questions or concerns, know that I am praying for you. We are over the halfway point. And if you are anything like I am, summer has gotten crazy and things are super busy. So hang in there. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I look forward to hearing from you and looking at your teaching plans this week. Y'all take care.